Hey everybody, welcome back to the Learning KSP series. My name is Andrew, that's my son Eli, and I am your fellow KSP student digging into Kontakt scripting. Now, if you're not familiar with what KSP is or what scripting in Kontakt is, make sure to check out the previous videos in this series to get caught up with what we are working on. As always, dropping a like, commenting, subscribing, all of that support is super appreciated. Even though I do realize that this series isn't the most popular on my channel, it's still been really valuable for me as I basically teach myself the KSP, like the scripting language and all that. So last time we checked out the third section of this manual that I have here. And I found this somewhere on the internet, and basically to me it's basically like a KSP tutorial that's taken us through the introduction right now of Kontakt scripting. Last time we learned about the init callback, which is the initialization callback. So whenever we hit the apply button, Kontakt runs the script, or anytime we basically pull up that particular Kontakt instrument, the init block is analyzed. We also learned that knobs are a type of UI control variable, which is a type of user-defined variable. UI elements are created in the init callback. And then we also learned that the := marks an assignment. The value at the right of those signs gets assigned to the variable at the left of the sign. And today we're going to be moving into the next section, which is debugging and customizing our script. I should give context real quick. I've got Kontakt pulled up, and I actually created a very simple, very basic instrument for us to work with that'll be a little more consistent for this series than just kind of me putting whatever together like I sort of did in the first few. So I actually exported out some samples that covers a pretty wide range. And I've put some reverb on there, a filter, just some real basic stuff here in Kontakt to give us something, again, something a little more consistent to work with. Just a nice little synth pluck sound. And right now we're hearing some basic intervals being triggered because of the script that we worked on in the last video, but this is actually something that is right from the start of this chapter. In this last part of the chapter, we'll begin with a slight variation on the preceding script, which is basically what we have loaded into Kontakt right now and what is pulled up here in Sublime Text. And I'm going to go ahead and scoot this over a little bit. There we go. All right. So with the knob labeled velocity, we can now modify the velocity of the generated note. If set to -10, for example, whenever we play a note velocity of 100, the generated note will have a velocity of 90. So that's basically what all this is saying. So why don't we just go on with something new, right? Like we kind of went over this already. Well, we think we're done with our little script, but alas, we're not. So let's try this. Set the velocity to the maximum value of 64. And play a note on our keyboard as loud as possible. Then take a look at the status of Kontakt in the lower left corner of the Kontakt window. So let's try this out real quick. Let's see if we can do what they're saying. So if we bump this all the way up to 64, and if we pay attention, oh, there it is. It's already saying it. Script warning, line 11. It says play note velocity parameter out of range. Yeah, and you guys see these little red dots? So I'm playing C3 right here, which is that one, but the one being generated is way higher, and yeah, it's telling us there's an error already. So yeah, we have a problem. What happened? You've played a note with a velocity of 100 or more. The velocity knob value of 64 was added to this velocity, and we ended up with a velocity value well beyond 127, which does not exist in MIDI. So KSP is so friendly to remind you that it was told to play a note with a velocity that is simply not possible. In this case, KSP will process the play note function with a velocity of 127 and output an error message. An error message does not necessarily lead to a catastrophe. In our script, we actually could live with such an error since the harmonizer does its job. However, make it a habit to watch out for those messages and program your scripts in such a way that no errors are produced. Yeah, because if we think about it, like if we're going to put out like a commercial product, we don't want these types of messages showing up when a customer is basically using the instrument. They don't want to see that. So that makes sense. So let's take a look at the following. So yeah, it looks like there's some stuff in there that we're not using just yet. Let me take just a quick second and get this into Sublime Text, and then we'll copy paste it into Kontakt. Okay, I think I did this right. I tried the copy paste method, and like I said, it just translates weird from the PDF document to the actual text file here. So let's make sure that this is all correct. Looks like it. On note, if event velocity plus. Okay, so yeah, this looks just about correct to me. So let's copy all of that, go back into Kontakt, paste, apply. Looks like everything is good. All right, and play a loud note. So if we play a loud note now, oh, and you know what? We should probably also add the message clear. So now Kontakt, the message at the bottom is cleared out. And there's no error message. Sweet. So let's go through this script. It contains two new elements, the message function and the if, else, and if control statement. So a lot going on there. So we got the message and then the if, else, all that garbage. I guess I shouldn't call it garbage. The message function writes text into the Kontakt status line. Here's the complete definition. So message, and then we can write in a number, variable, or text. It displays numbers, variable values, and text in the status line in Kontakt. And so it says we can also use combinations of the above. So message velocity and event velocity. So the message function can be extremely helpful in scripts when you run into problems and need to retrieve specific information. Please note that only one message can be displayed in the Kontakt status line, so you will always see the last output of the message function. If we want to output a message to the user, please do not use the message function. There is a GUI label, explained later, which is more useful for those purposes. Imagine having 16 instruments loaded, each with 5 scripts. If every script outputs messages, something like this script was created by so-and-so, master of scripting, it can get very annoying. In our example, we wrote message and then blank, or nothing, in the init callback. This is helpful if we want to clear previous error messages, and it did. So make it a habit to write message function and then blank in the init callback. You can then be sure that all previous messages by the script or by the system are deleted and you only see new messages. So basically this little text here is pretty important, and it's just kind of a force of habit to make sure that this is sort of put towards the top of all of our init blocks going forward. The next new element is the if, else, and if control statement. If the condition event velocity plus velocity is greater than 127 is true, i.e. the sum is larger than 127, the script will output play note event note plus interval 127 0 -1. If not, i.e. the sum is equal or less than 127, the script will output play note event note plus interval event velocity plus velocity 0 -1. An if statement is closed by the term end if. So now we can be sure that the play note function will always process correct velocity values, i.e. within the range of 1 to 127. Enough smart talk. Are we finally finished here? No. And that cracked me up earlier when I was kind of reading through this before recording. Are we really sure this script will not produce any error messages? We were talking about velocities exceeding 127, but did we talk about velocities below 1, which are also not possible? Right, so turn the velocity knob to -40 and play a soft note. We will get the same error message since the velocity in the play note function was below 1. So yeah, we'll go back in here. We'll turn this all the way down. And there it is. You guys see that at the bottom? It says script warning, line 17, play note velocity parameter out of range. Yeah, and then if we hit the apply button, that message goes away because, right, we wrote our message function and then blank. Without any further comments, take a look at the following script. So again, let me get this into Sublime, and then we'll copy paste that into Kontakt. All right, and just as a quick note, this is basically what it looks like when I just copy paste from the PDF into Sublime. Goodness gracious, I feel like it would have taken me just as long to type all of that. But I've got it looking as it should, I do believe. Yep, now our script should work as expected and will not produce any error messages. So let's double check that. Let's copy, go to Kontakt, select all, paste, apply, everything looks good. And if I go all the way down, no error messages. I'm playing very soft. Take a look at the velocities here. Go. Sounding good, looking good. By the way, the above announcement without any further comments is not quite true. In fact, our script now has many comments indeed. Take a look at the script editor. Yeah, so in Kontakt, we've got some text with this, like, to me, looks kind of like a weird, almost seafoam green color. In KSP, or I'm sorry, in Sublime text with the KSP syntax set, everything in the curly brackets is grayed out. Those are all notes. So pretty much anything we write between the curly brackets is a comment. So it's not interpreted by KSP. In the script editor, comments are highlighted. Again, same thing with the Sublime text KSP syntax. The purpose of comments is just to help us structure our code so at every point we know what we're doing. Yeah, and even in looking through some of the commercially developed libraries that I've got, there are definitely comments throughout that, within the thousands of lines of code are pretty helpful to see what's going on. Native Instruments warns us, be smart, use comments. We might find it silly to comment every command of code, but when working on larger scripts, this might become extremely helpful. Let's say we're working on a large script, take a break for a couple of weeks, and then come back to that script. Without any comments, it's very hard to get back into the code, which I agree. I've been working on some projects off camera, and that is very much the case. Also, do not expect anybody to help you with your scripts when you encounter problems if your script has no comments. It is just too difficult to look at 500 lines of code from somebody else without any comments. Yeah, and that makes sense. That's one of those things where, like, if we expect someone to help us take a look at it or develop something, that internal communication is real important. And I don't really know anything about, like, coding itself, like computer coding, but I'm pretty sure that might apply to the actual, like, computer programming industry as well. So our script is up and running. Do we need to worry about anything else? Yes. One more thing, and then we're done for today. So we're getting there. So load the script and find a nice combination of interval and velocity for our upcoming musical masterpiece. Save the patch or your project if we're working in a host sequencer and reopen it. All of your settings in the script module are lost. Yeah, so basically, if we go into Kontakt and if we, for example, leave this at let's say -64 on our interval at an octave. If we save it, yes, we do want to save with samples. We exit this, so remember, we're at -64 on the velocity, and an interval is an octave above, right? If we X out and then reload that, the velocity is now at 20, and our interval is at 7. So that's kind of what this is highlighting. So why is that? Well, whenever we load a script or a patch that contains a script, the init callback is executed. So thus, all variables in our script, that happens to be the two knobs, these are reset to their initial value, i.e. the values they were assigned to in the init callback. So that's talking about right here, interval is set to 7 and velocity is 20. So it wouldn't make much sense, right, to have this sort of a script with no recall, and we'd be right. It'd be pretty useless to load a script into a patch, tweak it, save the patch, and then lose those settings, right? So the only workaround would be to always write the parameter values into the init callback, but that's definitely not how most people work. That'd be really annoying. So let's take a look at how to fix that. So it is possible to make variables persistent. So let's try this script. All right, and it's got some extra stuff in here. It looks like about the only extra stuff is the make persistent. So let's get that in here. All right, and here's just a quick look at how the KSP syntax in Sublime text is super useful. So we can type in make underscore, and then we see it right here, make persistent, because I just used it, and then it automatically tells us that it's looking for a variable. So we would basically just type in velocity, and there we go. We know that these save the state of the knob interval and the knob labeled velocity, so I'm not going to copy the comments here, but we are going to copy all of this and put it into Kontakt. Script updated, no errors. So load the script, make some changes to it, save the patch, and reload the patch, everything right in its place. Yeah, so let's do this. So let's turn velocity to 0, and we will make the interval now -12, just to have some fun with it. Alright, so let's save this. And remember, I guess velocity is at -1, interval at -12, below an octave. Let's X out of this. We're going to load the instrument back, and there it is. So -12 and 1. So the make persistent function, super helpful. It says everything is back in its place. It is. So this is achieved by using the function make persistent. This function has to be written in the init callback and must contain the variable name. Again, the variable in this case would be the knobs. So make persistent essentially tells Kontakt to retain the value of a variable when a patch is loaded. So all variable types, for example arrays, user-defined variables, can be made persistent, not just UI control variables. So that's it. The script is finally complete. Congratulations. Now give it a nice title, save it, and most important of all, make music with it. And I have saved it. These synth plucks I actually made in Omnisphere and exported them. It was a patch in there called Falling Skies Pluck or Synth or something like that. I adjusted the ADSR to make it sort of a pluck sound. So in summary, we can execute commands under certain conditions with if, else, and if. But that's a mouthful. By using the message function, we can display numbers, variable values, or text in the Kontakt status line. If we want all variables, for example knobs, to be saved with the patch, use the make persistent function. Yeah, so make persistent is used all the time. If we're going to like do some scripting in Kontakt, that's really important. Comments are written in the curly brackets. For example, this is a comment. They are an immeasurable help for you and others in understanding the codes. Comments are really useful. And this concludes our little basic scripting chapter. From now on, we'll move on at a slightly faster pace with more complete definitions. Be sure to always play around with everything as we learn it. This is the only way to really grasp the full potential of the Kontakt script language. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. You cannot ruin Kontakt itself with any script. Yeah, so really good basic introduction with these first few sessions of scripting in Kontakt. I'm going to save this. And I do have it on the hard drive with the samples and everything so that we can always go back to it as we continue working forward. And so I'll show you guys a little something else that I've been working on. Let me see if I can find it in here. This is just a little user interface with some random samples that I had on my hard drive years ago. I think when I was working at Guitar Center, I bought an actual disc that was called, I don't even know what it was called, but it had a particular set of samples from a library called Ultimate Dubstep Drummer. So I've programmed these into this Kontakt instrument. We got our kicks, claps, and snares. And then I've also put volume knobs on this UI. You'll see that we've got different level meters for each grouping of sounds. And then there's also some basic controls for some delay effects that I've been able to apply to either just the claps, but not the snares. And then we've also got flare, again for either the claps or the snares. And then for the kick drums, I basically got a low pass filter. Yeah, so nothing crazy. These blocks here I'd sort of intended to be waveform views, but I haven't quite figured that out. And then I've got a reverb knob. And just to give you a quick idea of like how simple this user interface is, like let's look at the code, because it was a lot. It was a lot of lines of code, and this was, you know, many hours of me just chilling in bed with my wife at the end of the day with her laptop, controlling my computer, figuring this stuff out. But this is like one of those things that I've sort of been saying, like I've been working on off screen, is the ultimate dubstep drummer.nki, like my own little instrument here. Hey, little dude. All right, so baby is awake. I had to set him up real quick. But yeah, anyway, so this is a good example of like what I was able to figure out, just kind of teaching myself this stuff. Again, we've gone through the basics here in these first few videos, but it sounds like we're going to be picking up the pace here pretty soon. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Hopefully these videos will help somebody out someday. Again, I know they're not totally popular on my channel right now, but I'm enjoying doing them, and so I'm going to keep putting this stuff out as I learn, because I got some really big ideas for what I'm going to do with all this stuff over the next few months. So don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment if you've enjoyed, and I will see everybody in the next one.